Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. I hope you're all doing great out there. Today's guest is Jordan Rayboy. So I wasn't expecting this podcast to go in this direction. Um, my good friend Rich Rosen, the multi-million dollar biller, gave me a list of people. He said, interview all these people. They're in the pinnacle. They'll be interesting guests. Because when I said to him, I'm doing the mastermind program, he said, okay, well, you need to dig a bit deeper, find out what the best people are doing. So that's what we did. But I didn't really get to talk about recruitment to Jordan at all because his life is so interesting. Um, so to cut a long story short, he may be the first digital nomad recruiter. He's been doing it for a long time. He has a house in Florida, a house in Oregon, I think, and he spends most of his time over the last number of years in an RV, had a distributed team, thriving across America, Canada, skiing, hiking, living the dream, making big money, doing great things in IT sales in the software world. And what an interesting guy. Really enjoyed it. I think he even tried to move to Puerto Rico at one stage during all of this. Um, so really enjoyed it. I'm going to get him back on to talk more recruitment specific stuff, but super interesting. What a journey. And I am super jealous of the life that he's built. He now has a couple of young kids. I don't know if he'd be able to maintain this much longer, but he's pretty forthright. No, my wife's happy to do some homeschooling. We love our life the way it is. We don't want a traditional life. So he, yeah, that's it. I, what I was fascinated was he managed to do this before the tech was ready for it. So how he managed to do it is beyond me. Because even now, if you get an RV and you just drive around, like stuff goes wrong when you're on the road. And he's perfected how to go and live that nomadic life and be a recruiter. So fantastic story. Really enjoyed it. If anybody's interested in finding out more about our mastermind program, hit me up. I have a few places left. I'll be running these sessions now quite consistently, I'd say. We have 2 groups signed up to start next week. And I'll not go through everything, but look, winning business through automation, brand building, like getting your work done with virtual assistants, building that virtual team up, making sure that you're doing what the big businesses out there are doing as well. So like we take all the best practices from the scalable agencies out there, from how they make money, but not how they live their lives. And if you're an independent recruiter, somebody who's like only got a couple of staff, you want to figure out how you can free yourself up from the work that you don't want to do. And you want to figure out how you can get business coming in the door without having to cold call. We've done that. We've done it in our own business and we've replicated it in the new business that we've set up. So myself and Charlotte, and I've got a few special guests at different stages, going to take the groups through a 6-month course. Every 2 weeks we meet up. Every day will be in WhatsApp. Charlotte will be there to help with the details, the implementation. I'll be there to help with the creative side, delivering, facilitating, showing what best practice looks like out there, comparing where they're at to where they want to get to, working with them and all the group, how we get that roadmap together, just putting in all the stuff that we've learned that you can earn good money and have a great life. You don't have to be locked to your desk all day. If you want to know more information, hit me up on that. If you don't want to do that, but you still want some great advice, I have a startup community. There's 150 people who've just set up their agencies in the last couple of years. They're independent or they have 1 to 5 people working for them. It's called The Dinghy. It's on WhatsApp. We have a Facebook group too, but the good stuff, really good stuff, that's in the WhatsApp group. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. Love to speak to you. If you're a recruiter, great. If you're a recruiter thinking of setting up, great. If you're out there already, great. If you think I'm too big for that course, that's fine. We'll have other courses coming out that'll be suitable for you. And we have a group on WhatsApp called The Bridge and The Bounty. And that's for the guys who are running massive teams. And the conversations are much different because their business needs are. So there's a place for everybody. Hit me up. Love to speak more. Just before I jump into this, bit of a shout out to our sponsors. Vincere, love yous. Best decision we ever made was leaving their biggest competitor. Can't name them. To Vincere. They've taken care of us greatly. Most people in our community are going with Vincere now, so can't shout out enough about them. We've got great use out of Audro and out of Sourcebreaker, and we've integrated that into a BD solution. How you work all three tools together, how you can get Zapier involved in it to make it all sing together, a couple other tools as well. Going to be teaching everybody all these systems and hacks and all of that, so you can map your market better, recycle your candidates better, be hands-free, winning business, facilitating business, so you can go out there and build your brand and do more of it. So love to talk to you all about that. Hope you enjoy this podcast. I really enjoyed getting it done. So yeah, hit me up if you have any feedback, and have an awesome day. Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. Joined today by Jordan Rayboy. How are you, sir?
So at the moment, I'm at my mountain house in Oregon, Southern Oregon, near the Medford, Ashland area.
Oh.
I've got another house down in Hollywood, Florida, where we're originally from. And the majority of the year I spent driving around in a big RV, which is when I'm at my happiest.
Oh, man, I definitely want to get into that. Oregon. So I was looking up, I fantasize about moving to the US quite a bit. And Oregon has come up in the top places to live like multiple times. There's lots of like amazing little little cities as well. So do you just love it there?
It's amazing. I mean, we're on 60 acres. We're half a mile from our closest neighbor. We're 20 miles to the closest traffic light. Most people don't necessarily want to be that remote, but we got a couple dozen chickens that lay about a dozen eggs a day, and we grow a lot of our own food. And it's a pretty self-sufficient community that we live in, and there's just so many beautiful areas. I mean, Crater Lake National Park's about an hour and a half from us one way, and Redwood National Park down in California is an hour and a half the other way, and the Oregon coast is amazing, and there's a bunch of wild and scenic rivers. And I'm not really into big cities myself, so Portland, you can kind of take it or leave it, but Bend's a beautiful place.
That was the one that came up. Yeah.
Yeah. Bend's awesome. We go snowboarding up at Mount Bachelor and Bend all the time. And Ashland, which is pretty close to us, is also a really cool little town to check out if you want something a little smaller.
And I talk a lot about like remote recruitment, or at least I used to before everybody went remote. And but for you, it sounds like you're the godfather of this. It sounds like you're the OG of this, the man who took it to a whole nother level. Talk to me about where the genesis of the idea of, do you know what, I could do this and I could get an RV and I could live the life I want.
That's literally what happened. So I worked at an MRI franchise in South Florida from 2000 to 2006. Had a lot of success. Eventually went to enough Tony Robbins seminars that I got the balls to want to open my own firm, but I was kind of hamstrung by a 200-mile non-compete agreement. And the idea of moving to Orlando or selling my house immediately, or doing any of those things wasn't really that appealing. And so it kind of originally came up as a creative way to get around the non-compete. It was after several beers one night, and we were just like, how, and when you have a big enough why, the how kind of presents itself. And so, my wife's dad at the time, who's no longer with us, but at the time he was, and he had an RV, and someone made a joke like, "Hey, you could borrow Bruce's RV." And I'm like, well, I wouldn't want his RV, but like, could you actually do that? Like, is that possible? And I had like this wire crossing epiphany. I'm like, that pretty much sounds like the best idea in the world. And I stayed up the entire night reading about RVs, and I'm not very patient, and I don't really wait for things. So I bought my RV the next weekend. I think I had to wait about 6 or 8 weeks until I got paid a big commission check that I had to do. Yeah. And I resigned the day after that commission check at the bank. And we traveled full time for 5 months before we actually started our business. And then January 2007, right after we got married on the beach in Santa Barbara, we settled down on Lake Kachuma in the wine country right near Solvang, and spent the first 3 months of our our business and our marriage, living in the wine country and working from
What
the RV. And
what year was that?
that was in January of '07.
So like,
So about 14 years ago. And it was supposed to be a 1 year workaround for the non-compete. We just had so much fun that
yeah,
we sold our house in Florida and we drove around full time for the next 4 years. And 2010, we had too much stuff. We were, that was kind of popping out of every crack and crevice of the RV. So we bought a house just to kind of have a home base for our
yeah.
stuff more than to have a home base for
Let
us.
me take you back a couple of steps. So
Sure.
'07, the
Yeah.
internet was rubbish. Cloud computing was embryonic. Um, how did you manage to do it? Like logistically, like how did
Yeah.
you manage to get your job done? Like what? Like I can't imagine it then.
Yeah, so I was on a BlackBerry. It was like a big ass BlackBerry with an entire keyboard on the front of it, and we had like a first generation Verizon Wi-Fi, and it wasn't like a separate jetpack. It was like this giant thing that like plugged into a giant slot on the side of your computer,
Yeah.
and it kind of worked. It was like 2G, I think,
Even
and
in
we had
Solvang then?
say again.
Even when you went to Solvang?
Yeah, we if we had Verizon cell phone reception, we had Verizon wireless internet reception.
Okay.
And so it was kind of slow, but certain parks that we stayed in had Wi-Fi. That was definitely better, but we did the best we could with what we had. I also had a hotspot for British Columbia, which is still my favorite place. And Verizon internet at the time was prohibitively expensive, like $2 or $3 a meg or something. It was ridiculous in Canada. So we got satellite internet on the RV, pretty much exclusively, so that we could go live in Canada. And once we had satellite internet, we could be operational literally anywhere in North America, whether we had cell phone reception or not. It was too slow to make phone calls like voice over IP through the internet, but like we went to Burning Man in 2008, which is in the middle of the northern Nevada Black Rock
You didn't
Desert.
get much work done there then.
No, but I think once a day I would log on. I had a virtual team, so I would log on an instant message with my team and just kind of do air traffic control and keep deals from falling apart. And at Burning Man, you're not allowed to sell anything. It's just like this communal, like give everything away.
Yeah.
So I was actually giving away my satellite internet. I would just invite people, random strangers, into my RV, and people would like log on to my satellite. I was like the only internet in the majority of Burning Man. So that was kind of cool.
RV communities are a thing in the US, aren't they? It's a real way of life.
Yeah, and certainly it's getting a lot bigger these days with the pandemic. Everyone's wanting to get an RV because it kind of sucks getting on an airplane. It sucks renting hotels. It's with your RV you're kind of self-contained. And
how sweet is your RV at this stage? Have you pummeled loads of cash into the RV over the years?
It's actually, we just refied our house in Florida. It closed last week, and we refied it to pay off the RV. So even though we bought it for about 300 grand 13 years ago, we still owed 100 grand on it. But it was at 6.25%, and we got our house refi at 2.5%. So I'm excited about that. So I can officially say we own our RV outright after 13 years of payments.
So what would a good RV cost somebody these days? Like
I would never buy one new again if I was doing it over, because you lose 20-30% directly as soon as you pull it off the lot. So if you have the cash to buy one outright and not even finance it, that would be the way to go. You could just lowball someone and find someone who just wants to get out from under it. Definitely make sure you get an extended warranty, because the bigger it is, the nicer it is, the more shit there is to go wrong. And the more expensive it is to fix. And it's kind of like, having a boat. Everyone I've ever heard of who has a boat, like, it's just like a boat anchor, a hole in your pocket. So get yourself an extended warranty. I prefer motorhomes, over fifth wheels, mainly because my wife needs to pee like every 10 minutes. And if we had to stop, when you got a fifth wheel, you're in a pickup truck pulling a fifth wheel, you got to stop to use the bathroom. You got to stop to get food. You got to stop. It's like you're in a vehicle. You're in the RV when you're parked somewhere, but you can't drive in the RV. Whereas the motorhome, we're driving. Oh, I got to pee. Just walk back to the bathroom. I want to take a nap. I want to throw a pizza in the oven. Oh, you know what? Let's switch. We just pull the seat back and switch it, like cruise control at 70 miles an hour. We're just swapping. We'll go 8 hours without stopping. And we're eating, sleeping, we'll swap. I'll be in the chair next to her. I'm working. I got my recliner out in the passenger seat, and I'll just work all day. And every couple of hours, she's like, hey, I got to pee, or actually it's probably a lot more often that she has to pee, but we would never get anywhere if we weren't in a motorhome
Sure.
because bless her heart, but she pees a lot.
So the recession in '08, um, were you like well set up in an RV with low costs, so you were okay, or was it a scary time for you?
That's such a good question. Honestly, I didn't even know we were. I didn't even know that there was a stock market collapse until one of my employees told me. I was that oblivious, like that, living the dream. And at the time, I guess the companies I was working with weren't really affected. But yeah, I remember I was living on Vancouver Island at the time in a town called Parksville. This was like September, October. We had just come from spending a month in Montana and then a month in Whistler, and then we went to Vancouver Island, and we are just loving life, living the dream. And one of my employees is like, "Yeah, the stock market's at like 8,000." I'm like, "Really? I thought it was at like 14,000." He's like, "Oh no, like there's a massive collapse." I'm like, "Oh, well, thanks for telling me." That was back before I got addicted to reading bad news. So I was oblivious to like bad shit going on in the world. And now I've kind of swung to the other end of the spectrum in the last several
Well,
years.
we all have, I'm afraid.
I could definitely say I was a happier, more joyful person when my
Yeah.
head was in the sand.
Ignorance is bliss at times.
It
Um,
truly was back then. But one of my employees had to let me know we were in a stock market collapse because I wasn't aware
did
myself.
you have proper employees, or did you go down the freelancer route?
No, every one of my people have always been employees.
Okay.
So I've used maybe some internet researchers like 24/7 headhunting, mainly just for like a database update project. But all my people were always full-time employees.
And uh, were you the rainmaker and they were the delivery, or were they?
Exactly. I was the primary person bringing in the work and managing the client relationship. I had an admin researcher, Christina, who was with me 20 years between my old company, and we had 1 year apart. And on a day after the expiration of my 1 year non-compete, non-solicitation agreement, she rejoined me, and she was with me up until last November. But she's amazing, and I think with everything going on in the pandemic, it was just a good time for her to do something else. And she had a cousin that gave her another opportunity that I wish her the best on. But neither here nor there. She was my admin researcher. And then I had various teams of project managers over the years that I would bring in the work, and they would do the candidate recruitment. And some of them were able to elevate themselves to becoming their own account executives and kind of building their own desk successfully.
Okay, cool. And you so you managed to get to how many heads did you have at your max?
I was up to 9 at one point. Funny thing, that was probably right at the beginning. I was young and dumb, and I went from it just being my wife and I to hiring 9 people in a. So technically, we were at 11.
Yeah.
We were at 11 total, but we had 9 people besides us. Like right out of the gate. Like I'm like, whoa, I got more work than I could handle. Let me hire a separate admin, separate researcher, 6 project managers, and I was producing enough work for all of them. But uh,
The costs add up, don't they?
well, not just the cost, but what I discovered is while I am motivated and self-disciplined to work remotely and be effective,
Mm.
not everyone else is. Especially people living down near South Beach who stay out till 4 in the morning. You know, um, People respect what you inspect, not what you expect. And the more I would inspect, the more I would get disappointed. And my job became more like a policeman trying to get people to work remotely than being a rainmaker. So I slimmed it down for a number of years. It was we settled into a rhythm where it was just Christina and Amy and I. Amy is my wife Jessica's sister. She was with me for 11 years as my project manager. Eventually, we brought on Amy's husband, Mark, my brother-in-law. He was with me for 7 years, and we just kept that kind of little core team for a number of years. Mark eventually spread his wings and got into cybersecurity, and did really, really well. And eventually, him and Amy decided they wanted to do their own thing, and so I wish them the best, and we just carried on. But so yeah, I've had a lot of learning experience on the hiring front, and yeah, it's the funny thing is we help companies hire people for a living, and so often, at least the rainmakers amongst us, seem to really have challenges with building teams and hiring the right people.
Yeah.
Certain people that have more of like the ownership mindset and aren't I've, I think it's my buddy Jeff Kay always told me, what got you where you are will prevent you from getting you where you want to go. Like all the attributes that make you a really badass biller sometimes prevent you from, stepping out of the biller mindset and becoming a successful owner. And a lot of the most successful owners I know were three or $400,000 billers, but they're great leaders of people. And so
Yeah, and
it's an area I have for improvement. I'll
yeah,
leave it at that.
it's an interesting one, and I've interviewed hundreds of different people at this stage, and there's a very distinctive difference between you and Rich and the likes, and then the guys that have built companies to scale. Usually people who do that are setting out to do that from day one, like,
Right?
and they're trying to move away from the tools and the control of that, of the minutia of the detail. Whereas you guys thrive on it. Like, you love being in the thick of the deal.
Yeah. Well, and I guess to a certain extent, we're control freaks. To a certain extent, you know, we uh, we are extremely self-disciplined and motivated, and we get disappointed if other people aren't as self-disciplined and motivated as us. And when you find another you, they don't want to work for you. They want to be you.
Mm,
Which is what happened with Mark. He went from being my project manager to doing 200 to doing 400 to doing 900.
mm.
And once he's doing 900, it's like, well, I think Amy and I should kind of do our own thing, and
And
so
and that's natural because you're not building a company to sell, so there's no draw to stay in it for the long time. Whereas when somebody builds up something to sell and they hire younger people and get them bought into that journey and that vision, then it all makes sense to hang in there. And it's all like it's just built on the
yeah,
pyramid of that. And so that's usually what
yeah,
you do.
totally. And so like I've got a good buddy. His name is Monty Mers. I'm happy to introduce you to him. He's like that other end of the spectrum. He runs a firm called High Country Search Group in Denver, and they've got like 30 people. And
Yeah.
there's an equity program, and people have feel like they have ownership. And Monty's just an incredible human being. I'm grateful to call him my friend. But he was at 3 or 400K biller, but he's built this amazing firm that does several million a year in both perm and contract business in like a number of different industries. And he's actually built a business that runs beyond him. And I've just kind of I've came to the conclusion that I'm happy just printing cash and living the
Yeah,
dream.
you're a
You know,
lifestyle. You see, you're a lifestyle guy as much as you are like
yeah.
an exceptional independent recruiter. And I think there's a trade-off there that happens. Like, you want to live life in your terms. You want to run your business on your terms. If you have a team of graduates come in, you become a slave to their development, and
Yeah,
that restricts your wonderful life of being in the RV and doing that side
totally.
of it.
I've been saying for years, like there's a book called The 4 Hour Work Week. I'm a huge
Yeah,
fan of.
me
I
too.
mean, Tim Ferriss is awesome. I listen to his podcast all the time. It's probably my favorite podcast. But he's got a story in there about like the fisherman in the village, and like, if all of a sudden over years you invest years and years and years to become successful and grow your business and sell it off and take it public, and you make millions of dollars, so you never have to work again, then what would you do? I'd want to fish and hang out with my friends and do all the things that he's already doing right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, if I had 10, 20 million in the bank and never had to work again, or 10, 20 million in assets that were making me money perpetually, never had to work again, I'd probably want to be driving around in an RV and going to beautiful places and, being with people I care about, and, raising my kids as gently as I please. And maybe I would do it in a boat, cruising around the Caribbean or the Mediterranean, in addition to driving around North America. But I've,
He's had a rethink on a lot of the principles of the 4 hour work week. I'm sure you've. So there's a podcast I watched called the Tropical MBA. Have you come across those guys? I think you
no,
love them.
never heard of it.
So they were like at the very start of the digital nomad community, which is what you are.
Okay. Yeah.
And they built their own community off it. And I took lots of their ideas when I did this podcast and built a recruitment community from it recently. And they did a 10-year review on the 4 hour work week. And they said, look, essentially the systems and stuff back then worked. Right now you could do it, but you have to do intense sprints. So it like you might be working 4 hours a week for a little bit, but you'll be working 100 hours a week for like 6 months
Yeah.
to get something up, to get it running, to get it automated, to move yourself out. But Tim Ferriss now advocates be going always looking at your business and working out how can you get yourself out of it. So how can you do each year? He says you should take 3 months out of your business. And I thought that was fascinating. So
Hmm.
could your business survive and make money without you in it for 3 months? And that's the that's a like I don't have that business. Um, but I'm envious when I see people who get to that point. And
Yeah.
whenever you're selling a recruitment business, how you know a recruitment business is for sale is the CEO goes to chairman, and that's how you know that the PE company has said, make sure he's out of it so we can say it's not predicated on him to be a
Yeah.
success. So it's I'm always fascinated by that. But then the other side of it is what's it like maybe you have enough without having that big sale. Like maybe like you're billing X amount a year, so your profit margins are so high that you can live your life that you want anyway, and you don't need to walk off into the sunshine. You're in it
Yeah. So
already, bathing.
so you make a great distinction there. Um, like when I had a team, I could basically get the work in and then hand it off to Christina to do the sourcing and list building, sending mass emails, categorizing responses. The project manager would do all the candidate recruiting, and I could basically go live the dream until my project manager came back to me with candidates to present to the client. And I had trained my project managers well enough. They could do the write-ups. They could actually present the candidate to the client and run the process. And I would incentivize them to do that. I'd pay them a higher commission rate if they own the hiring process versus just presenting the candidates. So as long as I
I
kept
have the
bringing,
exact same system.
yeah. So as long as I kept
Yeah.
bringing the work in, I could literally work 10, 15, 20 hours a week, a couple hours a day, 2, 3 hours a day, and maintain at a decent level, which for me may have been billing 400 or 500 a year. Now, when I'm paying out a project manager 100 grand and I'm paying out Christina 60 or 80 grand, that means I'm netting out 200 or 300, which isn't great. It meets my expenses. Is really
Yeah.
all it does. It doesn't help move
After
me.
tax, you're down to a certain level after
Yeah,
you.
yeah, exactly. Especially now with a couple kids and traveling, full time in an RV is not cheap, especially when you got a couple of houses, that you got expenses on. But
Yeah. So let me ask a couple of questions on that. So
sure.
um, who ruined the dream and decided to have children and bringing that into the mix? Like it's I had once upon a time I had my backpack on. I was in Guatemala. We launched our recruitment business. I I had not a care in the world. I didn't need to make much money. I'm in the south of England. I've got 3 businesses. I work all the time. I've got 2 kids. I've got a mortgage. My bills are massive. Like it
Yeah,
changes everything having those little kids, hey?
you're chained, you're handcuffed.
Yeah, man.
Um,
That must
yeah.
have been
So,
a big
so
call for you with the life you had.
so you make a great point. So first off, I kept kicking the can down the road. Every time the conversation got serious, we got another dog, and once we got up to 4 dogs, I guess that's when I'm like, we
You
can't
ran
have
out of you ran out of dogs.
ran out of space for dogs like in the
Yeah.
RV. So eventually, I mean, we were married for 10 years, driving around in the RV before we had kids. So we went everywhere, not everywhere we wanted to go, but we did a lot. We had as much
Yeah.
fun as we could, went as crazy as we could, went to a lot of music festivals, went a lot of sporting events, traveled internationally a lot, and really just lived the dream fully for 10 years. And then we got to a place where we were in a good financial position, and financially secure, and that was kind of important to us to be able to flip the switch and focus on kids without having to worry about are we going to be able to afford to raise kids. We waited a long time because I think in 2016 Jessica was 38, I was 36. So we got married in 2006. So we waited a while, and it's been different. It's been largely different.
It's been painful.
Since then
It's been
we've
it's been really shit, is what you want to say.
it's our freedom has altered
It's
a
been
bit,
curtailed.
but we found a way to keep going. So like we've got this 43-foot RV, and I bought that particular RV because it's got a really nice big desk setup.
Yeah.
And people have been telling me for years, you better enjoy that RV shit now, because once you have kids, that thing is over.
Yeah.
So I like had many years to like plot my plan of how I was going to do it. So we always pulled a 27-foot enclosed car trailer. And so a couple of years ago, once we had the second kid, Hunter, who you met a little earlier, I got a bigger trailer that has a 50 amp power panel and an AC unit on the trailer. I got a fold down desk in the trailer.
Yeah.
So, now when we park somewhere and get to, we move on the weekends, and we typically stay parked somewhere for the week so that I could focus on work. As challenging as that still is in a lot of the beautiful places we go to. But, once we get our 4Runner and motorcycle out of the trailer, the trailer becomes my office. And it's like, I leave the RV, see you, babe, I'm going to work, go into the office.
Okay, I need to put another spanner in your dream here.
Yeah.
What about school? What's a crack like?
Yeah, well, so
are they going to be
right
feral
now,
children?
So right now my kids are 1 and 4, so school isn't really an issue yet. But with Ryder, we started her doing online schooling programs. I mean, shit, every kid in America is going to school virtually right now. What's the difference? Like all of these trends that were already started, like work from home, they were already in their infancy and gaining, gaining wider acceptance. Like homeschooling was gaining wider acceptance. Now all of a sudden, by necessity, everyone in America is working from home. Everyone in America is putting their kids in virtual schooling. It's like, that was our plan all along. We always planned on homeschooling our kids. I mean, at the point that Ryder is 5 next year, she'll just be in a formal online homeschooling program. But that's been our plan all along.
So the plan is both kids are going to do homeschooling, and your wife's going to be the one to deliver that.
Yeah, she'll deliver that. And by the way, both my mom and her mom are retired teachers. So, they've both volunteered to help out with that.
Are they living in the RV as well?
No. The great thing is, I mean, just like we're on Zoom right now.
Yeah.
I actually had my mom on a Zoom call with Ryder, and Ryder was sharing her screen. We set up the screen share. So Ryder was sharing her screen with my mom. So as Ryder's going through activities, my mom is literally talking to her just like this on speaker in the computer. And my mom was coaching her on the homeschooling program on a Zoom call while Ryder was manipulating through websites. I mean, it's amazing what 4-year-olds could do these days. Like literally, she's better on social media than I am. It's crazy.
How many years do you have to get away with this, do you think? Like,
I don't know. I think when you got a big enough why, you figure out how. You find a way.
I'm inspired. I'm inspired. My wife would never do that. Like, she always find like you're probably talking about my dream now. But having 2 kids, and I have 2 lunatic boys under 4, and
yeah. Hunter's one of dude. It was like I was terrified when I found out that Ryder taught him how to climb out of the crib. I'm like, no, that was the last bastion of control. The kid knows how to unlock doors.
I just love giving them away to the nursery every day. Like, it's the happiest moment I have in my day. Take these feral things and give them back to me later on.
Yeah.
But you don't have that. So your wife must be very involved and very like patient.
She's amazing. And sometimes when it looks like she's on the verge of a breakdown, I'm like, I could take an hour off the phones. Why don't you go downstairs and do a yoga class, or something like that. So yeah, it's a work in progress. I mean, as you know, but also we got the house back in Hollywood we actually bought it in the middle of 2019, and we were almost done remodeling it in March of 20 when the pandemic came down, and we're like, screw this shit, man. We're out of here. We're going back to Oregon. We're gonna hang out where we're a half mile from our closest neighbor, not 10 feet from our closest neighbor. And but in South Florida is where our whole family's from. So it was really like, now that we're out here in the booties, like kind of pretty isolated, I really miss having 2 grandmas and a bunch of aunts and cousins and other family around that we have help. It's really nice having help, as I'm sure you know.
We have her mom, so it's a real help. We have my mom as well, but her mom is in our bubble, as they call
Yeah,
it
I
here.
got you.
But
I got you.
okay, just before we go, I was going to ask you loads of recruitment stuff, but your life's
Sure,
too
go for it.
interesting. No,
Yeah.
no, no, I'm bored of that
It's
now.
probably more boring when you could talk
I've,
about
uh,
living the dream
I've
and
I've found a
taking your
hero.
business global.
I just want to talk about your life.
Yeah, well. So one other thing I'll mention,
Yeah,
because I had already dropped the idea about, hey, someday we're just going to escalate to doing this in a yacht and traveling around the world in a yacht instead of just traveling on North American RV. We actually moved to Puerto Rico in 2015. For that, with that exact expansion of our dream in mind. Puerto Rico has these really awesome tax programs called Act 20 and
yeah.
Act 22, where it's called the Export Services Act, where
Did they have a
as long as you
hurricane
move,
that year?
Hurricane Maria came in like 2017 and demolished the island.
Yeah.
So what I was getting at is I only stayed for 6 or 7 weeks before Puerto Rico. Beautiful place to visit, but it just felt a little too third world for me, like too much
Mm.
power outages and water going down and roosters and just
Well,
which I have chickens. So,
do you know what's
yeah,
really interesting, Jordan, is that because of the pandemic and the lack of tourism, a load of countries have opened up a digital nomad visa program. So
mm,
right now you can go to the Cayman Islands if you can prove that you can earn 100 grand and you can live tax free there. You could do it on like way lower earnings for like Bermuda, for the Bahamas, and I think even Costa Rica are getting in on the act. Dubai as well.
yeah.
So you can go live tax free for a year, live the dream, do all of that. I thought that's amazing. The rest of the world seems to be catching up to what me and you've been interested in for a long time.
Totally. So, and I've been working towards internationalizing for a number of years. The challenge for Americans is the U.S. is one of only two countries in the world, Eritrea in Africa being the other, that taxes their citizens on globally earned income, even if they're not living in the U.S. So
Unless
if
you
you're in
give
the
it up.
U.S., yeah. So if you go to Grand Cayman, IRS is still taking a bite out of your ass. The only exception globally is if you go to Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. territory.
Yeah.
So you don't even need a passport to go there. But in the U.S. federal government, they didn't want to just bail out Puerto Rico. So this was the incentive program they approved to help Puerto Rico financially. So it's called the Export Services Act. You can move to Puerto Rico. You have to move your residency and your business to Puerto Rico. And you can't be taking money out of the pockets of Puerto Ricans. So I can't recruit for Puerto Rican companies positions in Puerto Rico. But as long as I'm exporting services out of Puerto Rico, AKA I'm based in Puerto Rico, but I'm working with US companies on US positions. Huge with hedge fund people, financial services people. Peter Schiff, if you ever follow him, he lives down in Puerto Rico. He's taken advantage of this. There's a ton of people in financial services that have taken advantage of this Export Services Act. If you move your business and your residency to Puerto Rico, you only pay 4% federal income tax. So if you're making $1 million in the US, you're paying 36% federal income tax. And if you live in California, you're paying an extra 13% California income tax, state income tax. Yeah. So say you make $1 million and you live in California, you're paying 48% tax. If you move to Puerto Rico, you pay 4% tax. So you literally take your taxes down from 480 grand to 40 grand.
Yeah, we've a few things here that you can do. So there's a non-habitual residency program with Portugal, and I think it's open to the US as well. I'd have to double check on that, how that relationship works. But for people outside of the US anyway, it's the exact same. You go there, it's the money that you make from outside of it, and not in it. You get tax-free there. On dividends. So you can't pay yourself a salary there, but you can, as long as you have it all in dividends, then you're good with it.
Yeah. And Puerto Rico has something similar where whether it's investment or interest income versus earned income, that's like the Act 20 is one of them, and the Act 22 is the other one. The Export Services Act. So that's again why hedge fund managers who make their money on interest or dividend income also take advantage of that. And so if you're American, Puerto Rico is the only place you go in the world and not pay taxes to Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
But again, living there for 6 weeks, and we were looking at houses and we were looking at boats, and our plan was to live in Puerto Rico, but really get a boat and cruise around the Caribbean and be island hopping and be Puerto Rican and retire young, because we were gonna double our take home cash every year because we're not paying U.S. government income taxes. So yes, I've been pursuing the international angle, and I looked at, there are certain countries like St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica are two countries in the Caribbean where you could literally buy a passport. You could buy citizenship.
You can do that with Portugal.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I knew you could buy residency, like in Spain, if you buy a piece of property for like
You
$200,000 or $300,000.
wouldn't want to do Spain. Spain doesn't have a tax break. Like, so Portugal offers the tax break. The other one is Costa Rica.
Okay.
You could.
I've actually got a couple acres on the beach in Costa Rica. My uncle bought it in 1977 for $2,000 and sold it to me last year. So,
no way.
So I got 2 acres with an old shitty cabin on it, but someday we're going to build our beach house in Costa Rica, and that's kind of our next phase long term is live on the beach, Costa Rica, and ride a bike.
Listen, I'll have to get you back on the podcast again, and we might talk recruitment.
Sure.
You've made me absolutely sick jealous here with and kind of inspired me a little bit. So
I'll send you an email with some pictures, and then you'll be jealous.
Yeah, good man. All right. Thanks so much, Jordan. Thanks for coming on.
Great meeting you, my man, and look forward to keeping in touch. Have a great day.